As I mentioned in my previous video, a friend of mine on Facebook sent me this photo of her friend's son, ARRON, and asked if I could design a character or a charm of ARRON in his wheelchair for her. And after battling several migraines and the flu, I've finally been able to finish the design, and I'm recording this tutorial now for her. If you've seen my previous tutorial, you'll know that this is part 2 of a 2-part series. In the first video, we created the wheelchair, and for this second tutorial, we are going to be working on ARRON himself. So we'll get started, and ARRON will be done much like any of my other characters. So you will need a single rainbow loom in the offset configuration. The bands we're going to be using are black, skin tone, white, and silver. And if you've happened to see any of my previous tutorials, I have kind of divulged a little neuroses, I guess my husband would call it. I'm a bit of a pack rat. He would say hoarder. I keep everything, especially bands, and these are my broken bands that I use for facial hair, straw, fur, anything that kind of really needs to stick out and be like fuzzy or whiskery or whatever. And they're also very good to use as slip knot bands, and I can show you that later on. I also keep bands that are too stretched to use for a regular project, and these are bands from previous projects that I've taken apart for one reason or another. And you'll notice that here I have a few black bands that have been previously stretched, and also a couple of skin tone that are just a little, you know, they're not quite right. And I wouldn't use them for a new project. They're perfect for any time you need to double loop a band, and I also have a few white here as well. And I call me the queen of cheap, or call me frugal, or call me pretty darn smart, I would prefer, but I like to utilize everything, so I also keep everything. Anyway, I always find a use for it, despite what my husband thinks. Case in point, I was keeping all of the, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the little black elastics that come attaching sneakers or boots or something together. I was kind of hoarding those as well, and believe it or not, found a use for it. I actually patched our trampoline net with them, and they were exactly what this seemed to be made of. And so, like I said, there is a method to my madness. So, without further ado, let's get started on ARRON. As always, we're going to start with the attachments first, and we will do his arms. And for that, we're going to be using black bands and skin tone. We'll be using double bands, and we're going to go down 4 times with 2 black bands each time. 3, 4, followed by 2 skin tone bands for his hands, and we will cap this with a single skin tone band wrapped 3 times around the peg. I'm going to do the same thing for the other arm. Put 2 black bands 4 times, going down the pin. 4, again 2 skin tone bands for the hands, capped with a single skin tone band wrapped 3 times around the peg. And we can loop this we're going to reach inside the cap band and loop forward. We'll loop both arms, making sure we're grabbing both bands and looping them forward in the raindrop shape. And we're going to remove these from the loom, and I'm just using a spare crochet hook. You could set these aside on a toothpick or a skewer, or simply just carefully remove them. They would stay together fairly well. And we're going to set this aside. Next we are going to do his sneakers, and we'll also be using black bands, and again they will be doubled, so 2 black bands going once, and we're going to cap this with a single black band wrapped 3 times around the peg. We want to do the same thing for the other foot. 2 black bands capped with a single black band wrapped 3 times around the peg. And because he's wearing, I believe they're Converse, I think, or whatever he's wearing, his sneakers have white laces. So I'm going to take a single white band and wrap it around my hook 5 times. And now we can loop the first one. We're going to reach inside, grab the bottom 2 black bands, and slide all of these white bands down onto the black and loop them forward. And we'll spread those bands out after. We're going to do the same thing again for the other shoe. 2, 3, 4, 5, and wrap our single white band 5 times around our hook. Reach in, grab the bottom 2 black bands, and slide all of the white ones down onto the black before we loop forward over the peg above. And we're going to put these on our holding hook as well. And now we are going to make the ears and the nose. And for that we're just going to be using skin tone bands. And we're going to take a skin tone band and wrap it 3 times around our hook. Another skin tone band and double it, and slide all 3 of these loops down onto the double loop skin tone band. Again, we're going to take a single skin tone band, wrap it 3 times around our hook, another skin tone band and double it, and slide all 3 loops down onto our double loop band. And this will give us the ears. And we're going to place this on our holding hook, or these, I guess, on our holding hook. And now we will make his nose. And for that we'll be using skin tone bands as well. We're going to take a single skin tone band and double it, wrap it 3 times around our hook, take another skin tone band and double it, and we're going to slide all of these bands down onto our double looped band, and this will give us our nose. And I'm just going to leave this on my hook so that I don't forget to attach it when I'm looping. The next thing we're going to be making are his eyes. And I don't think I mentioned at the beginning when I was mentioning the bands we'll be using, that we will also need beads or bands for the eyes, as well as a C-clip. So what we're going to do, I've pre-strung my brown beads onto, this is actually Easter basket grass, and it's the best stuff I have found so far. It doesn't fray like dental floss does. You cannot break it, no matter how hard you pull it or stretch it. And I only just switched to a new piece from the same piece that I've used since Easter, so that tells you how long this will last. Anyway, so for the eyes, we're going to take a single white band and we're going to double it. And we will tuck the end of our floss or grass through the bands. We want to slide a bead down the length of our floss, making sure we catch the end so that we can thread the bead down onto the band. And I'm going to place this on my holding hook. And that's one eye. Again, I'm going to take a single white band and double it, tuck my grass through the center, slide the bead down, making sure to catch the end so that I can slide the bead onto my double loop white band. And this I'm going to place on my holding hook. And as I mentioned, you could use beads or bands for your eyes. And if you wanted to use bands, in this case, Aaron happens to have brown eyes, I believe. I have to assume that he does based on his complexion and what I could see in the photo. So I would take 2 brown bands, take the first one, double it, wrap it 3 times around my hook, thread it onto a double loop white band, do once for each eye, and then whether you're using beads or bands, we would then take a single skin tone band and thread both of the eyes onto that band. And we can set this aside. And the last attachment we need to make is for the ties of his hoodie that he's wearing. And again, I'm using my pre-stretched white bands because I need to double loop these. So what we're going to do, we are going to take a single white band and double it, and we're going to go down the loom 4 times. Each time with a double looped single white band. Four. We are going to cap this last band with a single white band wrapped 4 times around the peg. And what I've done here is I've just double looped a white band and wrapped it twice. So again, we want to do the same thing. We're going to take a single white band and go down the loom 4 times. And again, we're going to cap this last peg with a single white band wrapped 4 times around the peg. So we're going to reach inside our cap band, grab the bottom 2 white bands. I say 2 bands, but I know that it's only 1, but it is doubled, so we are grabbing 2 loops and looping them forward. We're going to do the same thing. Reach in, grab the bottom 2 bands, and loop them forward. We're now ready for the slip knot bands, and I'm going to reach inside this top peg, grab a hold of the end of my single white band, and form my slip knot. I'm going to do the same thing, and actually I forgot that I want to double these, so I'm going to do this one. I will double loop this white band, reach inside, grab a hold of the end, and form my slip knot. So I want to undo this one so that I can double loop it. I'm going to grab it, double loop, reach down through all of the bands, grab a hold, and form my slip knot. And there we go. And we can remove these carefully from the loom, and we'll set these aside. And I believe now we are ready to band our loom, and we're going to start at the top with his hair, and I'll be using black bands. And again, we're going back to doubled bands, so we want to place 2 black bands going down the center, 2 black bands going over to the left, and 2 black bands to the right. We want to go down the left side 1 time with 2 black bands, and down the right side 1 time with 2 black bands. We're now going to move on to the face, and we need skin tone bands. Again, we'll be using double bands, so we want to take 2 skin tone bands and continue down the center 3 times with 2 skin tone bands each time. For the neck, I want to use 3 skin tone bands, and those will continue down the center. We're going to move over to the left, and we will go down the left side 2 times with 2 skin tone bands. We're going to do the same thing on the right, and go down the right side 2 times with 2 skin tone bands. To close off the face, we're going to put 2 skin tone bands from the 4th peg on the left to the 5th peg in the center, and the 4th peg on the right to the 5th peg in the center. For the hoodie that he's wearing, we're going to switch to our silver bands, and this is to represent his zipper, and we're going to go down the center 3 times with 2 silver bands each time. I'm going to move over to his shoulders, and we'll be using 2 black bands going over to the left, and we're actually going to go all the way to the bottom of our row with 2 black bands each time. And we're going to move over to the right and do the same thing. 2 black bands going down the right side to the bottom of the row, and that's actually going to be a total of 7 times after you've gone over from the center to the right. So we're going to go down the right side 7 times with 2 black bands each time. Okay, to close off the pants and the center, we're going to go down the center 2 times with 2 black bands, and then we are going to go from the 4th peg in the center to the 4th peg on the left, and the 4th peg in the center to the 4th peg on the right. And I actually want to straighten these bands, and I'm just going to roll my hook around the peg, and that's usually enough to straighten them. And now we are ready for our holding bands, and we're going to take a single black band and put it around the 1st peg on the left and the right, and the 2nd peg in the center, a single skin tone band around the 2nd peg on the left and the right, and the 3rd peg in the center. The 3rd peg on the left and the right we're going to skip. This is where we will attach our eyes, and we're going to place a single skin tone band around the 4th pegs on the left, the right, and in the center. The holding bands for his shirt or his hoodie, we're going to put a single black band around the 7th pegs on the left, the right, and the center, the 8th pegs on the left, the right, and in the center, the 9th pegs. So now we're ready for our attachments, and I'm going to start with his arms. And you've probably noticed that when you remove something like your arms or legs or whatever from the loom, they tend to come off with a natural curve on the end, and I like to make sure that this curve is pointing upwards. So I'm going to remove these from my holding hook and put them on my regular hook, and we are going to attach these to the 6th peg down on the left and the 6th peg on the right. And there we go. And I'm actually going to remove my 2 hoodie ties, and they will keep themselves held together because we've put a slip knots on them. We're going to next attach the eyes, and we're going to loop one end of the band over the 3rd peg down on the left. We're going to separate the eyes and stretch just one band around the 3rd peg down the center, and we will put the other end around the 3rd peg down on the right. And we'll make sure that the eyes are pointing upwards and facing front. Our next attachment is our ears, and we are going to place one ear on the 2nd peg down on the left and the other ear on the 2nd peg down on the right. And the last attachment we have here for now is our sneakers, and one is going to go on the last peg down on the left, and the other will go on the last peg on the right. And now we're ready to loop, and we are going to start at the bottom. I normally start in the center, but this time I'm going to start at the bottom, and we're going to reach inside our cap band, grab the bottom 2 black bands and loop them forward, and we're going to do this 3 times. Same thing on the right side, reaching inside our attachment, grabbing the bottom 2 black bands and looping them forward, and again we will do this 3 times. There we go. Next we want to reach in and grab the top 2 bands on the right and loop them to the center, and we're going to go over and grab the top 2 bands on the left and loop them to the center. Next we can continue up the left side, and we're only going to go as far as where we've attached the arm. So we want to make sure we're staying inside the holding bands and that we're forming the raindrop shape as we go. We're going to loop up the right side as well, again staying inside the holding bands, forming the raindrop shape as we go, and we're going to stop at where we've attached the arm. Before we continue looping, we're going to want to get our hoodie tie ready, and I've just placed both loops around my hook, and I'm going to reach in through all of these bands, grab the bottom 2 black bands, and I'm just going to slide this tie down onto that black band and loop it to the center peg. I want to do the same thing with my other tie, and I'm going, or drawstring I guess it really is, I'm going to put it on my hook, reach down, grab both black bands, slide both white loops onto these black bands and loop them forward. And next we want to loop up the center. I'm going to reach inside, grab the bottom 2 black bands, and the next 3 are going to be our 2 silver bands. We want to make sure we're grabbing both and forming our raindrop shape as we go. When we get to the neck, we need to remember that we've used 3 bands here. So when we reach in, we want to make sure that we're grabbing all 3 as we loop the raindrop shape forward. Next, we're going to reach inside, grab the top 2 skin tone bands and loop them to the right. The next 2 skin tone bands are going to go over to the left, and the last 2 will loop straight forward. Next, we can loop up the left side, and we are going to make sure we're grabbing both and that we're staying inside the holding bands, and also that we're not catching the ear bands or the eye bands. So we're just going to continue forward, and we're going to loop to the top center peg, and then we're going to go over to the right side, grabbing the bottom 2 skin tone and looping them forward, staying inside the eye bands and the holding bands, and forming our raindrop shape as we loop to the peg above. And now we can loop up the center, and from the 4th to the 3rd peg is where I always attach my nose. So I'm going to grab these 2 bands, and I'm going to slide my nose down onto the skin tone bands and loop them around the 3rd peg. We can reach in again, staying inside the holding bands and looping forward our last 2 loops. And there we have it. And now we need to double check that we have looped everything. Make sure our eye is pointing to the top. You could also adjust this once it's off the loom as well. We've attached our nose, our arms, our feet. I'm going to look down the side to make sure everything looks okay. And I'm going to take a single black band, and actually I'll use one that's already been stretched, and I'm going to reach down inside all of these bands at the top center peg, grab a hold of the end of my loop, pull it through, and form my slip knot. And now we're ready to remove this from the loom, and I'm just going to carefully remove the sneakers and the legs from the bottom pegs, and then I'm going to use my hook to pry up the bands off the pegs. And I'm sure you've probably heard me say the reason I start at the bottom is because if I had started at the top and just pulled them all off, it would probably stretch my figure more than I really want it to be stretched. So that's why typically you'll see a lot of the designers removing it from the bottom to the top. There are some things that you may want stretched. I don't personally make bracelets, but I'm sure that bracelets would be one thing that you wouldn't mind if it was stretched a little bit as it came off the loom. And there we go. And now we have a couple of things that we have to do before we're done. We need to give him a little tweaking, and I want his arms down at his sides a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my hook down through the center of the teardrop and just give the bands a little tug. And you can do the same thing with your fingers, and I'll show you on the other side. I'm just going to grab a hold of the top bands and give them a tug, and that will point his arm down to the side like that. We are going to be adjusting them again once we have him in the wheelchair, but next we're going to attach his mouth, and for that we're going to use a single white band, and what we need to do is just reach from the back to the front with our hook and poke it through in the general vicinity of where the mouth would be, and pull it through to the back. Again, we want to go from the back to the front, up through in the general vicinity of the mouth. There we go. And we want to grab the other end and pull it through to the back. And we want to secure these two loops with the C-clip. I'm just going to slide the C-clip here and grab these two loops and remove my hook. If, like mine, your mouth slid up way under the nose, we can adjust this. I'm just going to grab both white bands with my hook and tug it down a little bit. And we just want to adjust this till you have the look of the mouth you want. And now what I want to do, because he's wearing a ball cap backwards, I want to do the same thing we did on the mouth around these top two skin tone bands, and that's going to represent the back closure part of his ball cap. So we want to go in again from the back to the front, and this time we want to stay as close to these two center skin tone bands as we can, and we're going to pull one end through to the back, and we'll go up the other side, grab the other end and pull it through to the back, and we're going to secure this with the C-clip as well. And you can either use the C-clip that's already here, or you can grab another one, and I think because I want this positioned in just the exact spot, I'm going to grab another C-clip. If I attached it to the same one down here, it might pull the bands down the face more than I want them to. So, and now I'm just going to straighten these two black bands and even them out. And I just want to try to get rid of as many wrinkles and twists as I can. And slide that up a little bit. And like I said, what this is supposed to represent is just the closure attachment or adjustment band part of his hat or ball cap. And there we go. Oops, I've got part of my tie tucked in. And now we need to secure our slip knot. And I'm just going to place my hook through some bands at the back, grab a hold of the end of my loop and pull it through. And I can attach this to the bottom C-clip that I have, attaching the mouth. And that will secure that slip knot band out of the way. And for the most part, there you have it. This is ARRON. Now we're going to attach ARRON to the chair. If it's not obvious, one of the ways you can distinguish which way the chair goes is A, we left the top slip knot band loose on the back of the chair, but if you didn't happen to do that, then your back of the chair is 4 loops long and the seat of the chair is 3. So that's another way that you can tell. So we want to adjust ARRON so that he'll be able to sit in the chair, and I'm going to take my spare hook and I'm going to reach through the center of all of these bands, and I'm just going right through the center, not down the teardrop, but basically the teardrop on the side. And what I'm going to do is just fold him in half and give these bands a little tug, and that will help him to sit in the chair better. I also want to bend his knees, so I'm going to place my hook sideways through the second raindrop loop, and I'm going to give those bands a tug. And the same thing on the other side. Through the second teardrop, we're going through the side, bending the foot down and stretching the bands. And this will help define his legs when he's sitting in the chair. And what I'm going to do is take a black band, because I want to secure his bottom to the back of the chair, and I'm going to place my hook going through the back of the chair to the front, and then I'm going to go through the body from the side, and I'm going to catch just the top 2 bands, well, I guess 4 bands, and I'm going to pull this band all the way through and then pull it through the chair. I want to reach my hook up through on the other side and grab the other end of the black band and pull this down through. So what we've done is we've just woven this black band through the body and through either side of the center column. And we can secure this with a C-clip. You could also just tie these in a knot if you prefer. I'm just going to secure them with a C-clip. And that will hold his bottom to the back of the chair. And now for the back of the head, we're going to be using our slip knot. And what I want to do is place my hook through the 4 silver bands at the back of his neck, grab a hold of my slip knot band, and pull it through all 4 of these silver bands. And then I want to place my hook through at the back, just weaving it through a couple of random bands, grab a hold of the slip knot brown band and pull it down through. And that's going to hold his head up, and we can just stretch this down and attach it to the C-clip at the bottom. And there we go. Now, as I said, we need to bend his arms a little bit. So I'm going to reach my hook down through the teardrop and stretch the bands. And that will angle his arms down, and he will be able to maneuver his chair. Just basically so they're reaching towards the wheels. You can position this. And now my first one I had so it would stand up on its own, and I'm not sure what I did. Maybe like that, if that's not off camera. I'll move it closer. I had it so it would stand on its own, but what I've done is I've taken a paper clip and opened it up and folded it into, I guess, a chair-like shape as well. And what I'm going to do is through the back of the chair, I'm going to place my paper clip woven through the bands on one side. And it's tricky to do this, so unless you do them both at the same time, but I'm also going to weave my bent paper clip through the other side, and then I can bend the bars, and this will support our wheelchair better in a sitting position. So there you go. This completes my 2-part tutorial on ARRON, and thank you so much for watching. If you attempt to do this or your own character in a wheelchair, please comment below and send me a picture. I'd love to see them. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can be notified of when I post new tutorials, and I have lots more coming up. Actually, I have a little sneak peek for you. My son had his 10th birthday party today, and as part of the loot bags for his guests, I asked each of the boys what their favorite Minecraft character was, and a couple of them picked Hero Brian from Minecraft. This is a sneak peek at Hero Brian, and the tutorial for him will be coming up very soon. So don't forget to like and subscribe again so you can be notified when this is posted. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.